All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia. This is it. Welcome in. I don't care what your record is in season-long fantasy. We've got you covered. DFS is an entire segment devoted to that. You can go back and check that out. Straight up wagering, everything we say is geared towards collecting all of us a profit. With that said, at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, those are our social media handles. Make sure you're following along. Joe, my man, the author of the Fantasy Black Book, it's doing well. It's helping everyone, as is this segment here. Start, sit. Everyone needs to know it. I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to let you start talking. Take the reins. Where are we going first, my man?
All right, the first one we've got here is a running back duel between Austin Eckler against the Pittsburgh Steelers. No Brian Robinson Jr., so that enters into it. And the Pittsburgh defense very good against the run. Or Javonte Williams against the Kansas City Chiefs, also a team very good against the run, but a little bit different of a quarterback situation. So I'm going to go with Austin Eckler for this one. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Remember we mentioned a couple segments ago about that big Breece Hall game against the Pittsburgh Steelers from the receiving side, not the rushing side. Right. That's what I want to talk to here when it comes to when it comes to Austin Eckler, because right now Pittsburgh has allowed the 9th highest yards per reception and the 5th most receiving yards per game to running backs. That's a lot. So there's opportunity here where he's not going to get all the workload. You're going to see McNichols. You're going to see some other guys work in this backfield, and it's probably going to frustrate a lot of fantasy managers. But there's opportunity for Eckler to be an RB2 or a flex this week, depending on what your lineups look like. So Brian Robinson not being in certainly opens up a little bit more workload for Eckler, but that void is going to be filled by other players on this roster for the Washington Commanders. But Javonte Williams, again, last week we saw a tough matchup, did not go well. This week, just as bad of a matchup. He went from the number 1 defense against the run to the number 2 defense against the run. It's not going well for him in terms of schedule right now. And then if Audric Estime starts to work into and get some more of this workload and they start to see what he is, quote unquote, well, guess what? That's not good for Javonte Williams. So hard pass for me. Give me Eckler.
All right, and that definitely starts to spawn ideas of an Eckler, perhaps all-purpose yard prop play. Okay, the next play, where would you like to go here? I got Quentin Johnson here versus Tennessee, and then Demario Douglas at Chicago. Which way would you go?
Interesting one here, because if it's a full PPR, Demario Douglas is probably where I want to lean. Now, here's the problem. He got a ton of targets last week, got a bunch of catches, but only for 35 yards. You know, when you catch 7 balls for 35 yards, it's kind of a weird stat line, right? The A-dot, not exactly exciting. You think that's probably better against the Bears secondary that's been pretty bad this month. That's the way I would look at it. But Quentin Johnson in the standard and maybe even the half PPR leagues probably has the bigger upside. You saw Quentin Johnson have that big touchdown catch last week against the Cleveland Browns with a missed coverage. And that's what QJ can do. He gives you that big splash play upside. That's not exactly Demario Douglas's game. So if you need a floor of points, Demario Douglas is the way that I would go. You take your 10, 12 points, you get out and you're happy, but potentially there's more if he should see the end zone this week against the Bears. But then Quentin Johnson, let's say you are playing against Jamar Chase this week or against Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow this week already and you're behind, I would throw it all to the wall and see if QJ could maybe get me a big game, go over 100 with a touchdown or maybe even just a 2-touchdown game, because we've seen him do that this year as well. The Titans offense is going to put too much pressure on the Titans defense, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, QJ is the upside play. Demario Douglas is the floor, but both, I think, are startable this week.
You know, I want to live in a world where everyone is called by their initials. I just think it would be a much better world if everyone's just shouting each other out. Hey, JP, what do you got here? All right. So here we go. Quick reminder, at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, those are social media handles. Send in some of your questions and your comments. Sometimes we'll talk about them on the air. Let's dive into that pool and take this one from there. It's TJ Hawkinson at Jacksonville or Jake Ferguson, home to Philadelphia. Who do you like there, Joe?
Yeah, look, these guys are right neck and neck, 11 and 12 overall in the Fantasy Pros rankings this week. I'm going to lean towards Hawkinson and the Jaguars and just hope for the best here, because it is such a bad secondary. There's so many points to be had for the team total here for the Vikings. And with Cooper Rush running this offense for the rest of the season now with Dak Prescott gone, it's hard to get excited here. I'm not saying Cooper Rush is the worst quarterback ever. He's not. We've seen far worse than Cooper Rush, and Cooper Rush is a guy that we've seen in short spurts before when Dak has been hurt, manage the offense. So Ferguson is a guy that you can start this week if you don't have any tight end options, or if your other one is Cole Kmet, who again, no more Cole Kmet. We're done with him. But if you have Hawkinson and Ferguson, I think I would lean towards Hawkinson, play the team total, hope for the best here. And of course, last week was going to be limited for Hawkinson. You had to know going in that was probably going to be the case. Last week, his first game of 2024, he had 4 targets, caught 3 of them for 27. Okay, fine. Let's shake the dust off. But now against Jacksonville, this is a matchup where he should be on the field a little bit more. He should have more work. And certainly the upside for fantasy points is there against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right, Joe, this next manager has Tua Tagovailoa and Jared Goff and can only start one. Tua at the Rams, Goff at Houston. What would you do?
Taking the indoor cat, Jared Goff, let's go. It's in Houston. I just don't feel confident about Miami. Miami just seems one of these teams now that is a collective of talent that just can't seem to get on track. And the Rams, I think right now, are a team going in the opposite direction. They feel like a team that says, hey, we're still in this. The NFC has some weakness in it. We could sneak into the playoffs. Heck, we might even be able to sneak out this division if we play better. They're starting to get some pass rush. They are starting to get some secondary play. It's not perfect on the defensive side for the Rams, but it is improved, and I think you have to recognize that. And unfortunately, the health of Tyreek Hill seems to be going in that wrong direction. I know we will see. I expect him to play. How good will he be? I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and just take Jared Goff. This offense just does not quit for the Detroit Lions. They just continue to just put points on guys and put points on teams. And I think they're going to do it again today. You get Jameson Williams returning in this game too. So you've got a full complement of healthy weapons for Jared Goff. So give me Goff. I know they're back-to-back in the rankings, but in single quarterback leagues, I'd rather be starting Goff, despite the fact that Houston Texans defense has a lot more name brand talent on it that you should be afraid of. I think Goff and this offense find a way every single week, no matter who it is. And I think they're going to find a way again this week.
Yep. Great analysis, as always, by you. All right, here we go. This next manager offers up Tyler Algier at New Orleans or Ricky Pearsall at Tampa.
Yeah, we're talking about flex spots here. I'm going to go ahead with Tyler Algier against New Orleans. The game script here for me is you get up early for the Falcons and then you pound the rock and just, second half gets kind of ugly and you just kind of run, which means a little bit more Tyler Algier. Ricky Pearsall now has to work in an offense where you're looking at Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and now Christian McCaffrey returning and I think it's tough for the rookie to look good here in this scenario. So although Algier is the second running back on his team, I think he has far more flex appeal in this matchup. And New Orleans, I wonder what kind of offense they can put together at all. This could be a 20-7 kind of game or a 24-3 kind of a game like that. It could be ugly like that, in which case Algier would work a lot in the second half. And we've already seen a couple weeks ago, the Tyler Algier garbage time is really useful. It put him over 100 yards rushing a couple weeks ago. So don't be shocked if you don't see that again today. In fact, if you're looking at even an RB2 scenario, if you don't love what you have because of injuries or buys, Algier might be a guy this week in particular with this matchup against a Saints team that might really struggle, Matt. I think that's a way that you could certainly look at it and start to feel a little bit more comfortable about starting Algier. And Pearsall, I just think he kind of gets left out in the dust. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you because of how you said it quite humorously, the and. There's just so many questions there with regards to San Francisco. There's so much uncertainty at this point. Unless I'm really up with house money and I can find some good numbers, I really want to avoid uncertainty, right?
Yeah, I think that's it too. It's the uncertainty. You can control Tyler Algier a little bit more. Pearsall right now, especially with returns of Jennings, with returns of Christian McCaffrey, right? It's just threading that needle, and that gets really tricky for fantasy points. So, again, with some of these rookies, people didn't want to hear it too when I said Jonathan Brooks might not be useful till week 10. Unfortunately, this is where we're at with some of these things. Sometimes certain rookies in certain scenarios take a little bit longer. When we come back, more FST. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about the injuries, who's in and who's out.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST. It's Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here. We're giving you everything you need in order to dominate, or at the very least, just be competitive, to find yourself in the plus money somehow, some way. At the end of the day, that's all anyone can ask for. And that's a great segue into this next FST segment. It's time for the injury update. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're all day to day, right? But all we can ever ask for, and look, if you find yourself just up, even if it's just a little, and it's someone else's money, God bless you. I think you win in life. Joe, what do you got?
Well, let's start here with the Dak Prescott injury. So Dak's going to be out for the year. So this is a terrible blow to the hopes here. You got Micah Parsons back, but you lose Dak Prescott. So you're going to be losing Mike McCarthy too. How he kept his job last year, and I'm not somebody who likes to call for the heads of coaches, but when you have a Green Bay team that is the greenest team in football, the youngest team in football, come in and blow your doors off at home, and then you start the season getting your ass kicked at home in a couple games too, to me, like, that's just unacceptable. That's poor planning. That's poor management. That's poor head coaching. And Dak Prescott now leaves these Cowboy assets behind with Cooper Rush playing quarterback. Maybe we'll see a little Trey Lance. Who knows? We're hearing some rumors about that too. But the interesting thing here is the value of CeeDee Lamb, because CeeDee Lamb's value has cratered, which makes it a really interesting buy low opportunity. Now, is he going to be prolific like he was in the second half of last year? Absolutely not. Does he have a really intriguing playoff schedule? The answer is yes. So he's already passed his bye. That's a good thing, because Bye-pocalypse is coming up weeks 12 and week 14. All these teams are on bye. You're going to need some bodies. CeeDee Lamb is going to be playing. Here we go. Check out this schedule here for CeeDee Lamb. Rest of season and then into the playoffs. Philly, Houston, Washington, the Giants, the Cincinnati Bengals. We know what that secondary looks like. The Carolina Panthers to start the playoffs. We know what that defense looks like. How about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary? And then, again, the Eagles in championship week. So there's a lot of good matchups left on the table for CeeDee Lamb. He's not going to be a buy low, but he is a buy, because I think some people are going to look at the disintegration of the Cowboys and just want to get out from under it. And I understand that impulse.
Okay, and it is that impulse that has sent shockwaves throughout. Yep, he's back. Go ahead, buddy. Talk about it.
Yeah, I think he still has that potential to be a fringe wide receiver one. And when you look at the playoff matchup specifically, very, very intriguing there for him. So I'd be looking to kick the tires on CeeDee Lamb in all of my leagues.
All right, I love what you're doing here. Let's keep the conversation going, because I think it applies to at least 3 out of the 4 teams and the players on which they represent. Brian Robinson Jr. with the hamstring. What does this mean for his team? Talk about scheduling. Talk about all these options.
Yeah, Brian Robinson Jr. out again. Very frustrating with his hamstring issue. This is a guy that's been a really rock-solid RB2, one of the best return on investments we've had in the draft, and a guy that we were very much on, but it's been frustrating lately. The good news is it was a bad matchup anyway on paper for him, and on top of which, if you have Austin Eckler, this is the time to get him in there. Is he going to have the full workload? No. Does he have a good situation catching the football against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense? Yes. And that is something where you can hang your hat on, especially in those PPR leagues. So that is a big plus. Also a plus, Deebo Samuel is going to play today in Week 10. He's been dealing with rib and oblique issues there. Christian McCaffrey, we talked at the top of the show. Everybody knows he is back with that Achilles, so he is going to be playing. Now, how much that workload is, we'll see. We've been told that it's going to be probably a significant workload, but it is a wait and see kind of situation here. I don't think Jordan Mason in this first game just disappears, and I don't think he disappears around the goal line area either. Gabe Davis is expected to play, also Brian Thomas Jr. The problem is Trevor Lawrence is not. So Mac Jones will take the reins under center for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's probably bad news for the Jags assets, but good news for the defense of the Minnesota Vikings. So if you've got them, make sure you fire them up this week. So that's kind of the update on those guys. Also, Drake London, we thought might be out this week, but he is going to play through this hip injury. Again, a good matchup for him against the Saints. However, we come back to that same concept we talked about with Tyler Algier. If they're up by a lot and in control of this football game, you will see them take the foot off the gas here, especially with Drake London. So it is a game that favors Darnell Mooney more, probably. You just kind of coast through Drake London, get him some spots there. You could even see Ray McCloud work a little bit in this passing game too early on. So it's hard not to start Drake London. I would be starting him regardless of the injury in the the situation here and the matchup. But I think at the same time, you might want to temper your expectations or give yourself a little bit more in your flex spot, because it could be one of those games where you're just managing through with the player than it is him getting you a ton of fantasy points because of the way things stack up here. So you could see a lot of Bijan, a lot of Tyler Algier in the second half, and just an easy victory for Atlanta, because I think this Saints team is just dust.
What kind of prop would you jump on for Darnell Mooney? How would you try to take advantage of that? And then you could talk about Chris Olave.
Yeah, I think with Darnell Mooney, what I'd be looking for most likely, again, is probably the yardage totals. I don't think we want to necessarily run towards the receptions here, because my concern is reception props are for games that go back and forth, right? The games like Thursday night, or if you're finding plus money on something that's really priced wrong in the market, which doesn't always happen. Some guys that work in the slot, that's another spot too where you would want to go for that. But I think with this one, Darnell Mooney, anything in that mid 50 range, I think I'm comfortable with the over, and I think you're probably going to find that in most markets. So that's probably the range here what I would go over. But again, I don't know how much they're going to have to press any of this at the end of the day, because it could be just a very heavy Bijan, Tyler Algier, let's run the football, let's get out with a victory and keep everybody healthy. And that could be a really easy recipe for a 20-3 or 20-6 kind of win for the Falcons. And make no mistake, too, the implications of this game for the Falcons in this division are huge, because you win again against the Saints, right? You already have beaten up Tampa. You're in control of this division. Forget the Carolina Panthers. This is the Atlanta Falcons division now, and they are already minus favorites. So just keep that in mind. That's where the trend line is going. So if you want to put some parlays together with division winners, now's the time to put the Falcons in it.
All right. Now you mentioned the Saints. Let's close it out with Chris Olave and the concussion. Where do we pivot?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough part. You can't pivot with winning this offense. You're pivoting to guys like Quentin Johnson. You're pivoting to guys like Darnell Mooney. Like, that's what you're looking for right now with some of those guys. But more to the point, I don't think you're going to see Chris Olave for a few weeks, and you might not see him for the rest of the season. I think that's in the range of outcomes. So if you are a Chris Olave manager, what you've got to do right now is you have to plan for the future and start to look ahead, because Olave, I don't think is going to be an asset for you come playoff time. When we return, a look into the futures market. What does it mean for fantasy? What does it mean for your wallet? We'll tell you.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here. Cool Hand Luke and TD Jake behind the glass, including a whole host of others that make this thing go. All right, it's now time to make some money. Rub our hands together. Here we go. FST Futures Update each and every week. We look at a different futures market, try to find the broken line, try to tell you, at least Joe does, try to tell you when to get in and even when to get out. Suck at the NFC West here now with the return of Christian McCaffrey. It kind of makes the Niners a bit more palatable to the wagerer. You have a team like Arizona that you had mentioned would be plucky. They dipped and dove, and if you look up, there they are. Here come the Rams, and you've been talking about it. They seem to really be heading in the right direction. And then you have Seattle. Joe, I would lean Rams here. I'm looking at the Rams to make the playoffs as well, but what do you think?
Well, to win this division, again, the Rams right now are actually in second place. They are ahead of the 49ers currently. Now, 49ers are the lead dog here, which makes a lot of sense. In the wagering market, you're still getting plus money on it, but with the return of Christian McCaffrey, that is the hope, right? I think the interesting investment, though, is the Rams because you have a veteran quarterback, you have a great head coach, you have a running back who has been the model of consistency, which I don't think we talk about enough, that outside of one game in the last 15, Kyren Williams has a touchdown. I mean, that is incredible. Kyren Williams just keeps getting it done, and this was a player I think a lot of us were wondering, is he a one-year wonder? He had a foot issue too in the beginning of this year, right? And we thought, oh no, it's going to reek of one-year wonder. Well, it hasn't been. Kyren Williams, if it wasn't for Derrick Henry, I think we'd be talking a lot more about Kyren Williams and how good he's been. So you can run the football. Now that you have your receivers back and you have Matthew Stafford, you can throw the football. Can you play some defense? And I think when you look at the coaches here in this division, I'm sorry, but the best coach in this division is still Sean McVay. And I know people don't want to hear that. People say, oh, Shanahan and Shanahan. Well, if it's Shanahan, then he should have given Christian McCaffrey a couple more carries and he could have won a Super Bowl. And every time you get into big games with Kyle Shanahan, what does he always do? The same thing. He always tries to show you that he's the smartest guy in the room. He always tries to show you that he's got the bigger playbook than anybody else, and he's going to find little clever ways to show how cute and smart he is running offense, instead of sometimes boring old football where you just control the game, control the clock, control the score. And Sean McVay, I think, knows how to do that. And I think if this gets tight here, this Rams plus 380 number is really intriguing. Now, the 49ers should win today. I expect them to win today. But I do agree with you. There's some value on the Rams at plus 380. Look, I don't want to disparage the Cardinals. I know they're in first place. They're 5-4 in this division right now. But the inconsistency of that team is just too much, I think, to bear out in the second half. So watch the Rams very closely here. If they get a good victory today and the 49ers get a victory and all of a sudden the Jets should somehow beat the Cardinals, now you're going to really see a movement here in this line next week.
All right, let's move it over to the AFC side where while the NFC seems a bit muddled, everyone has their favorites. The AFC, I think it really is 3, maybe 4 teams. Let's have this conversation. AFC Championship winner, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills. Let's focus there. The long shot, or I guess the 4-1 would be the Bills, and then the Chiefs are the favorite. What do you like?
Oh, yeah, the Bills are fun. The Baltimore Ravens certainly have offense, and they have Lamar Jackson, who is looking at another MVP potentially. But I just see one team. I continue to see the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs play defense. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Andy Reid. And they're going to get Pacheco back. And now they got DeAndre Hopkins, which is the big piece that was missing. Somebody they could really rely on to throw the football to. And you saw last week, I know it was against Tampa, but you still saw it. It's still there. Okay? It's old. It's veteran. But you know what? Like my dad used to say, youth and skill is no match for old age and treachery. And I think the Chiefs have a lot more old age and treachery. And I think they're going to find a win. Look, they're going to find a way to win these games, and they're probably going to have the bye. And again, when you have that bye, then it's 2 home games to get to the Super Bowl. Last year, they were the underdog. This year, 2 wins to the Super Bowl, and that's a pretty easy road for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I still like the Chiefs.
Yep, and I like you, man. You were raised, you're a good man, you're a good father, and you're a good friend. So all eyes are smiling on you, my buddy. All right, let's talk about the Super Bowl here straight away. It's the Chiefs to lose, but give me something else.
It is, but I think you got to respect the Lions. I also like that they went out there and got some help, too, on the pass rush side, because when you lose Aiden Hutchinson, you lose a big piece. So the Lions at plus 500 are a really interesting wager. I've bet the Chiefs-Lions together. I've also bet the Lions and Chiefs separately to win, but that right now it looks like the NFC is the Lions to lose. They look really strong. I know there's, the Vikings still in that division. I get that. I get that the 49ers just got Christian McCaffrey back. But it feels like the Lions are every year taking another step forward, and it's been a hard learning curve at times. They're in a spot, too, where they have potential to get that bye, and that bye is huge. And then 2 home games in that building, that Detroit crowd's going to be ready. When we come back, more FST. Don't go anywhere.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia and Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports. Today, it's going to be time for our over-under segment, but during the break, Joe and I were just sharing great memories of our childhood and the impacts that our dads have had on us. And out there, no matter what, if you're a mom, you're a dad, no matter what, a human being, an impact on a child's life should never be underestimated, man. Just a small thing that you may think is innocuous and means nothing can mean everything to a kid. Obviously, the big things do as well, but let's just never lose sight of that. It's time now for Fantasy Over-Under, Joe. Where do you want to start?
All right, well, I've been pounding the table for this all show. I know I feel bad. I feel like we're ganging up on Javonte Williams for 2 weeks in a row, but
I think he can defend
man, don't hate the player, hate the situation. And last week, I should say, it wasn't good for Javonte Williams against the Ravens, and I don't think it's going to be good this week for him against the Chiefs. It's just not. 34.5 is the number you're getting. In some markets, I've seen this actually been bet down already. In some others, some spots are actually getting it at 35.5. I'll take the under here. And again, if I'm fading him in fantasy, I should be bringing that over to the wagering market and understanding how these things work. If Audric Estime starts to eat in, even if he gets 3 or 4 carries here in this offense, that's enough to really assist this 35.5. And I know people say, well, 34.5, 35.5, that's a small number. I know. And yet he still didn't go over it last week. We also talked about, Monday Night Football. We talked about Devin Singletary's under last week. And guess what? We write about that one too. I know the overs are sexy and fun, but sometimes when you look at some of these rush defenses and what they've been doing, you have to understand not only are they going to shut this team down from that perspective, the game script is not going to be most likely, I want to emphasize that. Anything can happen, but it's not going to be in the Denver Broncos' favor. They're probably going to be from behind in this game at some point, and that's when you start to abandon the run altogether. So all of those issues coming together, one confluence of events, has to make you look towards the under for Javonte Williams today. Again, 34.5, 35.5 in most markets. It's a good number. Bet the under and just move on with some more fun because there's a lot more fun to be had today.
I like it. Look at you, all bound and wrapped in leather. Very classy, Joseph. All right. A lot of times when a team is in turmoil, a wagerer will look to some type of recognizability. The New Orleans Saints is that team in turmoil. Alvin Kamara could be those calm waters. How would you approach wagering on Alvin Kamara this afternoon?
I would look at overs for him because, again, there's just not much left here. So Alvin Kamara rushing the football, Alvin Kamara receiving the football. The rushing yard total is 70.5. It's pretty tall order. It's actually ahead of Bijan Robinson in the same game, and I understand why. The rushing attempts, and I'm not one to usually go for attempts, or receptions, but the attempts I think is intriguing here because it's 16.5. And I think that is a pretty good number for him. I think that's a number where you just have no choice but have to keep handing the ball to Alvin Kamara and handing it to him again and again and getting the ball in his hands. So I think that is the best medicine for this Saints team right now is just be very Alvin Kamara centric, throw the football when you have to, try to see if you can keep this game close with the Falcons, and maybe you get a bounce of the ball to go your way. Maybe the defense makes a play, something happens. It's probably unlikely, but I think the best chance the Saints have right now is to just keep going with what they've been doing all year, which is the workload of Alvin Kamara being steady, and I could see that being another big day for him here. So let's go with the over on the 16.5 attempts for Kamara, but probably still an L for the Saints at the end of the day.
All right, let's try to focus only on W's here. Let's pivot to a quarterback. Joe, does Sam Darnold throw for 245 yards or more today? Yes or no?
I think he does. I think most of this comes in the first half too, but I also think Sam Darnold hears some of the things around the league that are being said about him. Sam Darnold hears that, it's easy to be good when you have Justin Jefferson. Well, yeah, it certainly helps. We're not going to lie. It's also easy to be good when you have, players like Jamar Chase and you have alpha dog wide receivers, which is why that I hope sooner than later the Patriots give Drake Mays somebody like that to throw the football to. But regardless, this matchup today where Trevor Lawrence is not going to be playing, they're probably going to hand short fields or even hand the ball just more frequently over, you would think, to the Minnesota Vikings. This is a really good spot here for Sam Darnold and company, 244.5. I'm going to go over this mark. I'm going to go over the Jefferson numbers too, which are very high. I just want to let everybody know. But it's hard not to imagine him having one of these 100-yard receiving days because you're in that mode against the Jaguars, who are just so bad. Now you lose your quarterback. They've been so bad on defense in that secondary all year. You can throw them all day long. This is just an easy one, and sometimes the stats just bear it out. And that's the best thing about the second half of the year is we've got all of these numbers now in which to make good decisions going forward, right? First week of the season, first 3 weeks of the season, it's kind of a mishmash. Like, remember the Seattle Seahawks? Were they good? We weren't sure. Well, guess what? They're not that good. So some of it has to do with schedule. Some of it has to do with opponents. Some of it has to do with injuries. But now we have a good, clear path of knowing who teams are and who they aren't. And now we can really put that knowledge to work for us, not just in fantasy, but in the wagering market too.
All right, I like it. Let's continue to do the work here. Early in the show, you had mentioned that one game to circle for an upset special could be Arizona and the Jets. If that is the case, how do we approach Breece Hall? 68.5 yards on the ground, rushing yards is the number. How would you wager that?
No, I'm going over. Absolutely going over on this one. We spoke earlier too. Like, this offense is still the Breece Hall show if you are going to be competitive, especially on the road. And I think 65.5 is a very generous number. I think this is a number you take every day of the week, and you're very excited about it, and you take the over. I think he's got a shot for 100 today. And you let Aaron Rodgers at this stage of his career hand the ball off to Breece Hall, run some play action once you've opened that up, and see if you can get some guys open and make some easy throws here. Because Aaron Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers of 3 years ago, okay? Let alone the Aaron Rodgers of 5-6 years ago. So we have to get that out of our brains. And I think, you see a win last week and people think, oh, it's fine. It wasn't fine. Go back and watch the tape of that first half. It was absolutely dreadful, okay, in that first half. Second half, they made some adjustments. They got lucky on a couple things. Hey, okay, cool. But let's not throw that all away here with Breece Hall, okay? Let's not think that all of a sudden now we're a passing attack here, that this is the Don Coryell offense of the Chargers from the early 80s, late 70s, okay? That's not it here. So get back to running the football, Breece Hall over, and let's move on to the next one here. All the Breece Hall today. Let's go.
Okay, I love it. And references solely for Mike Cardano. Perfect. Okay, so, listen, a good threatening running back, I think, can impact good quarterback play. Let's continue that conversation and talk about the Christian McCaffrey's return. We talked about how it impact guys like George Kittle and a few others. Let's talk about how it impacts Brock Purdy here. What do you expect to see from Brock Purdy? The number set is 260.5 yards through the air, passing yards. What do you think about Brock Purdy today?
I think there's another one that is really generous. I think you're going to go over this handily. It's a great matchup here. Tampa has just been terrible giving up passing yards all over the place. And then you get Christian McCaffrey back. And the Christian McCaffrey situation allows you to pad those stats. So sure, you're going to hand the ball off to him just as much as you were handing off to Jordan Mason. So I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. And Baker Mayfield is not going to quit. Like, that's just something that Baker Mayfield doesn't have. He's going to keep, even if it's to his detriment, he's going to go out there and still try to make plays and figure out things. And unfortunately, that's how Chris Godwin got hurt a couple weeks ago. But the same thing is going to be true here. So no quitting Baker Mayfield. That's a good thing for this 260.5. We're going to go over this. Again, I think a big day from George Kittle. You've got the full complement of weapons now for them. Save Brandon Ayuk for the first time in 10 weeks. So coming off that bye, I think confidence, I think a good situation, good matchup. Give me the over for Brock Purdy.
All right, and let's finish it out with the time that we have remaining. Washington has a tough defense in front of them. What does that mean for quarterback mobility? Let's look at Jaden Daniels, 44.5 rushing yards. Those pockets break down, those plays break. He could find this, Joe.
He could. Don't look for the attempts, though. Look for the over on the yardage instead. And the reason being, obviously, that pass rush, right? When TJ Watt is running after you, you got to escape that pocket and get out there. And there could be a couple big runs in here potentially. You could also see some garbage time runs, too. You could see them sitting back in prevent at certain times, and maybe Jaden Daniels late in this game picking up some big runs for some big first downs. That would pad these numbers quite a bit. So 44.5, really good number. So this is a great test, too. I mean, this is a game that has my focus. You got the Steelers coming off a bye. You've got Jaden Daniels who've been lighting the world on fire. Some really fun matchups today, too. So we're really keeping a close eye on that one here. When we return, some names on the wire that might be able to add.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe, where we always keep it classy. It's the most important thing, isn't it, Joe? All right, let's go to the waiver wire. Oh, yes, he has a retort. So let's go to the waiver wire. Yes, Joe?
Yes, please. Let's definitely go to the waiver wire. We'd love to give you an update on football happening in London. In Germany. I think you'd rather get an update on football happening in London. Is Man U playing? What's going on? Yeah, it's just ugly football going on right now.
Okay, what is
I don't know. It's what we have here is a lack of football being played in Germany, which is very sad. I'm very sad for everybody out there who has to watch this. But I mean, it's a good time. Everyone's out there at the stadium. I guess it's the thought that counts at the end of the day. But man, oh man, there's gonna be a lot of coaching changes at the end of the year. Matt Striker, for those people like Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick who did not get head coaching jobs. There's going to be a lot of jobs available. Who knows? Maybe I'll get considered for a job. What do you think? You think it's time to give me a head coaching job? Let's go.
Dude, you
put me in the front
are
office.
The man. You belong wherever you need to be. With regards to football in Germany, the only name that matters over there is Lothar Matthäus. And hit me up if you know what I'm talking about, baby. Let's go to the American football waiver wire here because there are some names that are going to matter. They may not be Matthäus-esque, but they may help you. Let's go to Pittsburgh here as a running back that, Joe, you've talked about earlier in the season. Didn't really get a chance to come to fruition, but now here we are, and this is what matters. So let's go to Pittsburgh and talk some running backs. Who do you like?
Yeah, I really like Jaylen Warren. He's the top of my list right now. He is only rostered in, again, 55% of leagues. Like, that's crazy to me. He should be, especially with the upcoming bye weeks. Now he's past the bye week, so I get that maybe it dragged a little bit last week because he was on a bye. Okay, fine. But if he's out there right now, add him for nothing. Don't wait till the waiver wire this week to then have to pay more for him. If you can, on rolling waivers on Sunday morning, you get up, you watch the show, you add Jaylen Warren. And there's a big reason why. Number one, he is part of a backfield where they're going to run the football in Pittsburgh. He's got some equity to catch the football. I understand, last 2 games, 44 yards, 46 yards rushing. Okay, he's finishing somewhere as, like an RB3. But again, now off the bye, let's look at that schedule, right? He's a guy that can catch the football. He's that passing down back. Well, you've got the Cincinnati Bengals. You got 2 games against the Cleveland Browns. You got 2 games against Baltimore coming up. Oh, wait, and another game against Cincinnati, even in Week 18 if you're crazy and you're playing Week 18, which you shouldn't. But anyway, there's enough there where the Steelers are going to have to throw the football out of that backfield because running it is not going to work against some of those teams like Baltimore and like Kansas City, who's also on there. So look for Jaylen Warren to actually be really useful, especially in PPR leagues. I can't believe he's still out there in as many leagues as he is. Add him now. You're going to thank me come Week 12 and Week 14 because you're going to need bodies.
All right. Speaking of bodies, I want you to stretch your legs here and do two for me. You got two Chargers here. You got one from one side of the football, and the other's going to throw him the football here. You got QJ and JH. Joe, what do you like?
Yeah, I like Quentin Johnson, another guy too, available in about 60% of leagues right now. I understand he's a little boom or bust. I get that, but Justin Herbert looking better. Matchups coming up for him too. He's got Tennessee today, then Cincinnati next week, and Baltimore after that. Again, that's really good. We talked about the playoff schedule for this team earlier in the show. Tampa, Denver, New England. Okay. It sounds like I want some Chargers right around that time, right? So it was another big game based off, yes, one big play that went for a touchdown. But I think it is a good indicator that if he could stay healthy and stay on the field with Ladd McConkey, that you can start to open this offense up, especially because the run game has become very predictable for them. J.K. Dobbins has faded a little bit here, and it's because of the predictability, which means that it's time to open things up. You came here, Mr. Harbaugh, because you had a quarterback. Use the quarterback, okay? This is the NFL. This is not Michigan. Throw the football a little bit. And I think you're going to see them throw the football more here in the second half. And I think that's out of necessity. And QJ is another guy that, again, some weeks it might not be great, but those weeks where he has a touchdown, it's going to be very good. So another guy that's under rostered should be added, and add him now, because I don't know how much more we're going to get off the waiver wire in the weeks to come leading up to those fantasy playoffs. So now's the time to be aggressive before you get to week 12, before you get to week 14, and you're looking at your roster and nobody's available. QJ's available. Add him now.
All right. With that said, sometimes it's, one man's junk is another man's treasure or something to that effect. You look at a team like the New Orleans Saints, and a lot of people will tell you, enough with that. But, Joe, you and I think that there could be some value somewhere. So who do you like and why?
Yeah, again, this goes back here to, you add Justin Herbert along with Quentin Johnston. Again, you add those guys together, especially if you lost Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence, in those deeper leagues, potentially. That's your pivot point. It's not the Tuas of the world. I think it's actually Justin Herbert, to tell you the truth. Also, Taysom Hill is another guy, too, that I think you could look at and feel good about his role in the offense. He's a gimmick player to a certain degree, but he's a football player. And they don't have a lot of football players remaining, period, on this roster. So whether Taysom Hill is playing quarterback or running back or working at the goal line or playing tight end, whatever he's doing, he's going to be out there. And you're going to see Taysom Hill, and we're at that point in the season where if he's healthy enough to be on the field, he is a fringe tight end one because he has that touchdown equity that he offers in those scenarios. One more guy to mention, too, again, it's too late to add him, but you should be on your radar, is Xavier Legette, 48% rostered for Carolina. Speaking of Carolina, Jatavian Sanders, a 5-yard touchdown reception. So there you go. At least the crowd in Germany got to see a touchdown today. Hooray for them. Good. Let's all celebrate. Let's all do a fun dance and drink a nice beer there too. But look, Xavier Legette, 48% rostered, has touchdown equity. Jalen Coker, another guy too. Just because the Carolina Panthers are bad doesn't mean you can't get some fantasy points out of them. Right. And those are two guys specifically that I think you should keep an eye on, because no matter who's under center, if it's Bryce Young, if it ends up being Andy Dalton again at some point, I think Legette is clearly probably the best guy there. And then Jalen Coker in those deeper leagues, another one that's just not rostered in a lot of scenarios. He should also be on people's radars.
All right. I like it a lot. That's definitely going to help people when we return. It's time for 3 and Out. And don't forget, at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, those are social media handles. Get in on the conversation. Keep the conversation going. Without you, we are nothing. But when we come back, Joe, you're going to have something, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. We're going to have the things to look forward to in Week 10. And there's a lot. Some good football games ahead of us. Some big fantasy days, too. Looking for the Vikings to put up a ton of points. Quarterbacks are dropping like flies. What does that mean? They'll tell you when we return. Don't go anywhere.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia and Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Another fantastic show. A tip of the cap to everyone behind the glass, the entire crew, and most of all of you. Just want you to know that before we came in here out of the break, the entire crew is talking about their plans for the Christmas party. This is a real thing, folks, and I, for one, almost want to regurgitate because I am not ready to have these conversations about Christmas parties, holiday parties. What are you going to wear? I don't know. What are you going to wear? Hey, remember that last time we were up on the rooftop? Oh, my God, open bar. I have so much hair. Folks.
Wow.
I hope you're enjoying
yourself. That was a lot to take in.
I really
That's
do. I hope that you really are having
the next
fun.
show. Yeah,
Joe,
this is when you know this show's over and it's time to move to the next one.
This show's just getting started, buddy. What do you got? Things you're looking forward to outside of my
Well, I'm looking forward to holiday parties. Like, I'm already festive. I'm wearing the red today. I'm very, holidays start October 31st is Halloween. Once I hit November 1st, I'm thinking about Christmas. I'm a Christmas guy. I'm ready to go. And for Christmas, there's a lot of things that I want. I would want to see the, Kansas City Chiefs continue to make me money like they did last year. We're going to talk more about them. Kansas City is on the verge of going 9-0. They're the only undefeated team. Everybody keeps taking shots at them, and they just keep winning football games. And I think it's really interesting that they keep finding different ways to win. They find ways to win with Patrick Mahomes running the football, making plays. They find ways to win, giving the ball to Kareem Hunt, a guy that was on the scrap heap. Finding ways to win with new wide receivers who just joined the team 2 weeks ago. Finding ways to win where, Travis Kelce is old, he's done, he doesn't do anything. Well, 14 catches later last week, all of a sudden he's not so done, is he? It's just, and then they find ways to win on defense on a weekly basis. This is who the Chiefs are. And the Chiefs are getting a taste of what the Patriots had for about 2 decades, which is, can you be at the top of the mountain? Can you be that team that people are always taking those shots on and just keep winning football games? And it's hard. It's not easy to do. It takes a great coach. And Andy Reid is a Hall of Fame coach. And the fact that he's doing what he's doing in this environment is astounding. So when you got the coach and you got the quarterback and you can surround them with a defense, it's the difference between looking at the Chiefs and looking at the Bengals, right? The Chiefs have got the quarterback, right? The Bengals have got the quarterback, but they don't have the defense. And if you don't have the defense, what are you going to do? Same thing with Lamar. You got the quarterback. You probably have the head coach there too, but you don't have the defense. You need all three if you're going to win Super Bowls. But back to fantasy. Christian McCaffrey is scheduled to get about 20 touches today. That's what we're hearing. So that's certainly enough to be starting him. You waited this long. You can't wait anymore. So here you go. Fingers crossed that no re-injuries happen here to Christian McCaffrey as he goes against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, a great matchup across the board. I'd be investing in Purdy and Kittle today personally. Everyone else can change, and choose their own adventure as they will. Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, the feel-good story against the old-school Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a fun out-of-conference matchup that I think if we were going into the season, honestly, I don't think a lot of people were circling this as the game they wanted to see most in Week 10. Right. This is probably not it. I'm just saying. And for me, I think it is. I want to see how good Jaden Daniels is against a Mike Tomlin defense. I want to see TJ Watt go and try to sack Jaden Daniels. I want to see Jaden Daniels escape and make a big play. I want to see all that. And I want to see just how good the Commanders are. Because if the Commanders can beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, then I think the Eagles are in for quite a run here towards the stretch. Now, if they should falter here, lose this game, and Cinderella loses the glass slipper a little bit, well, maybe that context changes a little bit. Maybe, just maybe. But I'm looking forward to this game regardless. And also, something that just broke, Matt, we've got to share this. Tyreek Hill, because of that wrist, quote unquote, his status is truly up in the air. So that doesn't make you feel good. Looking for pivot points. Let's try to help people off the waiver wire. We mentioned Quentin Johnston. That's a guy off the waiver wire. Demario Douglas available in about 80% of leagues right now. That's a guy you could probably stream. DeMarcus Robinson, I don't know how it's happened, but this guy didn't do anything when he had his full workload of all these receivers being gone. Kupp comes back, Puka comes back, and this guy keeps scoring 2 touchdowns a game. I can't explain it, but you know what? If Tyreek Hill doesn't play and you're looking for a streamer, maybe DeMarcus Robinson's that guy, but this is going to impact that line a lot, don't you think, Matt, of this Miami game? Again, no Tyreek Hill. That is a player that moves the needle.
Yeah, absolutely. And great job by you and the crew for giving that breaking news as we're about to hand it off to the next show. I mean, it's definitely something that people are going to be scrambling, and that's why we do what we do here, Joe. And a couple of segments ago was about the waiver wire, and then we're talking about these wide receivers and pounding this pavement. So hopefully people out there are prepared and they're ready to go.
Yeah, and the toughest part here is a Monday night game, right? So if you wait and Tyreek Hill doesn't play, you are in a bad spot. Like you are screwed. But DeMarcus Robinson, again, also a Monday night player in the same game. That's the smartest pivot point. Grab him now, wait and see. Hill's out, you make that swap. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. From Matt, I'm Joey P. See you next time, kids. Enjoy week 10.
Has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from 3. Now, I'm not saying he can shoot at 49% from 3 for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players to hit home run. I call it covering the board. If I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.